HarperCollins presents The General Danced at Dawn by George Macdonald Fraser, read by David Monteath. The General Danced at Dawn. Monsoon Selection Board. Our coal bunker is old, and it stands beneath an ivy hedge, so that when I go to it in wet weather, I catch the combined smells of damp earth and decaying vegetation. And I can close my eyes and be thousands of miles away, up to my middle in a monsoon ditch in India, with my face pressed against the tall slats of a bamboo fence, and Martin Duggan standing on my shoulders swearing at me while the rain pelts down and soaks us, and all around there is mud and more mud, until I quit dreaming and come back to the mundane business of getting a shovelful of coal for the sitting-room fire. It is 50 years and more since I was in India. My battalion was down on the Sitang Bend, trying to stop the remnants of the Japanese army escaping eastwards out of Burma. Why we had to do this, no one really understood, because the consensus of opinion was that the sooner Jap escaped, the better, and good luck to him. Anyway, the war was nearly over, and one lance corporal more or less on the battalion strength didn't make much difference. So they sent me out of the line to see if a War Office selection board would adjudge me fit to be commissioned. I flew out and presented myself to the board, bush hat on head, beard on chin, kukri on hip, all in sweaty jungle green and as tough as a buttered muffin. Frankly, I had few hopes of being passed. I had been to a board once before back in England and had fallen foul of a psychiatrist, a mean-looking little man who bit his nails, and asked me if I had an adventurous spirit. War Office selection boards were always asking questions like that. Of course, I told him I was as adventurous as all get out, and he helped himself to another piece of nail and said cunningly, "Then why don't you sign on to sail on a Norwegian whaler?" This, in the middle of the war, mark you, to a conscript. So, thinking he was being funny, I replied with equal cunning that I didn't speak Norwegian. Ha ha. He just loved that. Anyway, I didn't pass. So I flew out of Burma without illusions. This particular board had a tough reputation. Last time, the rumour went, they had passed only 3 candidates out of 30. I looked round at my fellow applicants, most of whom had at least 3 stripes and seemed to be full of confidence, initiative, leadership, and flannel, qualities that selection boards lap up like gravy, and decided that whoever was successful this time, it wasn't going to be me. There were 2 other 14th Army infantrymen, Martin Duggan and Hayhurst, and the 3 of us, being rabble, naturally drifted together. I should explain about selection boards. They lasted about 3 days, during which time the candidates were put through a series of written and practical tests, and the board officers just watched and made notes. Then there were interviews and discussions, and all the time you were being assessed and graded. And at the finish you were told whether you were in or out. If in, you went to an officer cadet training unit, where they trained you for 6 months and then gave you your commission. If out, back to your unit. But the thing that was universally agreed was that there was no known way of ensuring success before a selection board. There were no standard right answers to their questions because their methods were all supposed to be deeply psychological. The general view throughout the army was that they weren't fit to select bus conductors, let alone officers, but that is by the way. One of the most unpleasant features of a selection board was that you were on test literally all the time. At mealtimes, for instance, there was an examining officer at each table of about 6 candidates, so we all drank our soup with exaggerated care, offered each other the salt with ponderous politeness, and talked on a plane so lofty that by comparison a conversation in the Athenaeum Club would have sounded like an argument in a gin mill. And all the time our examiner, a smooth, beady gentleman, kept an eye on us and weighed us up while pretending to be a boon companion. It wasn't too easy for him, for at our second meal I displayed such zeal in offering him a bottle of sauce that I put it in his lap. I saw my chances fading from that moment, and by the time we
Sample complete. Ready to continue?